Hey, folks, welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. Alaska is a land defined by extremes. Its mountains rise above immense glaciers. Its forests stretch across areas rarely visited by humans. Its coastal waters descend into cold, unexplored depths, while isolated communities remain separated by hundreds of miles of wilderness. Now, in such a vast and unforgiving environment, people disappear. Strange lights move across the sky. Unknown creatures are reported in forest, villages, mountain valleys, and offshore waters. Some encounters last only a few seconds. Others continue for years. Now, tonight, we'll examine reports of unexplained humanoids, crawler-like entities, a partially cloaked giant, an alleged military Bigfoot operation, an enormous sea creature, a massive silent UFO, and claims of something hidden beneath one of Alaska's most mysterious mountains. These are the cases of unexplained Alaska. Now, our first report comes from Fairbanks, where two teenagers encountered something that appeared almost human, but moved unlike any person they have ever seen. The primary witness was approximately 16 years old. He and his friend had grown up in the same neighborhood and were familiar with its streets, distances, and normal appearance of people moving through the area. Now, one summer night, the teenagers began debating whether a person could see further in the darkness while lying flat on the ground. To test the theory, they stretched out in the middle of a road and looked toward a single street light near the witness's home. As they watched, a dark silhouette passed directly in front of the light. Now, the figure was humanoid, but unusually tall and thin. Its head appeared vaguely oval, while its arms, legs, and torso seemed elongated. No clothing was visible. Its manner of movement was even more disturbing. The witness described it as fluid and effortless, almost as though the figure were swimming rather than walking. It crossed the road on only 3 long gliding steps, moving far faster than any ordinary person. Now, the being emerged from a stand of pine trees on one side of the road and disappeared into the other stand on the opposite side. Now, the witness immediately felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. His friend then whispered, "Did you see that?" Both teenagers ran back to the friend's house, locked the door and windows, and remained awake discussing what they had just witnessed. Now, years later, they told the story to an assistant manager at a pizza restaurant where they worked. And as he listened, the manager became visibly disturbed. He then claimed that he had encountered the same type of figure while walking home from a high school party. He had been so frightened that he turned around and returned to the gathering rather than continue home alone. Whatever crossed that Fairbanks street appeared human in shape, but its elongated proportions, unusual speed, and smooth gliding movements suggesting something entirely different. Now, the Fairbanks encounter lasts only a few seconds. Now, our next case involves smaller humanoid figures that allegedly returned repeatedly over several years, were gradually transforming an ordinary patch of forest into something dark, decayed, and lifeless. Now, between 2013 and 2018, a woman identified as Lisa lived in a wooded property near Homer, Alaska. Now, during that period, she began noticing unusual movement among the trees surrounding her home. One night, while sitting in her bedroom with her boyfriend, Lisa borrowed a pair of binoculars and focused on the trees outside. She saw what she described as a little man. The small humanoid was moving from tree to tree, hopping through the branches in a strange, almost playful manner. Its movements appeared effortless, as though it had no fear of falling and was unaffected by gravity. Now, approximately 1 month later, Lisa began seeing more of them. The activity became increasingly frequent. Eventually, she believed that hundreds of small figures were moving throughout the trees near the house. Lisa began questioning her own perception because no one else seemed to notice the creatures. Her boyfriend initially dismissed the sightings, but according to Lisa, he eventually saw them as well. And as the activity continued, Lisa noticed another disturbing development. The trees frequented by entities began to deteriorate. Branches weakened, trunks darkened, and sections of the surrounding forest appeared to die. Lisa began wondering whether the creatures were somehow causing the damage. So in 2018, Lisa and her family moved to Kodiak. Now, after leaving the Homer property, she never saw the entities again. In 2021, she returned to the location while participating in a television production of Aliens in Alaska. When she saw the forest again, she was shocked. The trees near the former home were dead, rotten, and blackened. Lisa later drew the beings as she remembered them. Her illustrations depicted thin, pale humanoids with oversized heads, dark eyes, elongated limbs, and crouched or crawling postures. Their appearance resembled entities commonly described as crawlers. However, their repeated movement through the trees and the apparent environmental damage made the Homer case particularly unusual. She believed that the beings were not native to Earth. Now, the entities reported near Homer were small, pale, and numerous. In the remote Yupik village of Tunanak, residents described something much larger, a towering humanoid concealed with unnatural darkness, possessing enormous wings and glowing red eyes. So in 2011, I received a series of disturbing accounts from a witness I will call Nate, who lived in Tunanak, a remote village on Nelson Island in southwestern Alaska. Now, Nate claimed that he and other villagers had repeatedly encountered a tall black humanoid with glowing red eyes and enormous wings. Outsiders might compare the entity to Mothman. Some local residents referred to it as the devil or a demon. Nate preferred to call it the dark man or the black man with red eyes. Now, his first encounter occurred when he was 9 years old. While walking home, Nate saw a figure standing near the edge of his father's roof. It appeared human in shape and stood approximately 7 to 8 feet tall. Now, Nate called to the figure several times. It initially ignored him, but when he demanded to know why it was standing on his house, the being turned and looked directly at him. The face seemed almost human. Then it slowly opened its eyes, revealing a deep red glow. Now, after staring at Nate for several seconds, the figure leaped high into the air. Massive wings extended from its back, and after only two powerful movements, it flew over the nearby high school. Years later, Nate encountered the entity again while riding a snowmobile with his cousin. The two had noticed a strange light on a hill outside the village. When they approached, the light suddenly disappeared. Moments later, a dark form appeared to rise directly from the ground. It grew to approximately 7 feet tall and rushed towards them. Nate and his cousin fled to the snowmobile at nearly 50 miles per hour, but the black figure followed closely behind them. Its wings did not flap. Instead, it appeared to glide above the ground, closing to within approximately 15 to 20 feet. The entity abandoned the pursuit only when the snowmobile reached the village. Now, Nate's third major encounter occurred when he was 22 years old. After using a Ouija board, his room became intensely cold and he felt compelled to look outside. A dark human-shaped figure stood near a laboring house watching him. Although a streetlight illuminated the area, its face remained hidden behind a cloud-like blackness. Nate followed the figure as it floated silently through the village. Dogs began barking as it passed their homes. Now, when the entity reached the local church, it circled the building but appeared unwilling to approach it. It then continued toward the open tundra. Nate became convinced that it was attempting to lure him away from the village. He stopped following and returned home. Now, according to Nate, similar beings have been reported throughout Tunanak and other nearby communities. Descriptions have included a wingman, an angel with red eyes, a towering cowboy-like figure, and a shadowy humanoid capable of passing through walls. Some villagers believe its appearance precedes illness, death, tragedy, and other disturbing events. Nate did not believe the entity was literally the devil. He considered it an unknown presence concealed within dense, unnatural darkness whose identity and purpose remained unexplained. Now, the dark man of Tunanek appeared capable of flight, unnatural speed, and perhaps even influencing those who encountered it. Further east along the Alaska Highway in northern British Columbia, another witness described a massive humanoid that appeared to move between physical visibility and near transparency. Although this next encounter occurred outside of Alaska, it took place during a remote wilderness corridor leading north toward the Yukon and Alaska. In summer 2021, a travel nurse working in Fort Nelson, British Columbia, reported encountering a massive, partially transparent humanoid along the Alaska Highway near Steamboat. The witness had borrowed a hospital vehicle and spent her day off traveling north towards the Liard River. While returning to Fort Nelson, nearly a 529-kilometer marker, she suddenly felt compelled to slow down, even though she had not seen anything unusual. Moments later, a large creature emerged from the forest on the right side of the highway. It was approximately 100 feet away and moving rapidly on all fours, apparently traveling on the tips of its toes and fingers. The creature stopped at the edge of the road as the witness brought the vehicle to a complete stop. Now, only about 20 feet away, it rose onto two legs. She estimated that the being stood between 9 and 10 feet tall. It possessed a solid, heavily muscled body covered in matted grayish-brown hair resembling dreadlocks. The creature crossed the paved highway in only 4 strides. Now, although it never looked directly at the witness, she felt certain that it was aware of her presence. As it passed in front of the vehicle, she experienced a disturbing sensation that the being had somehow touched or entered her mind. The most extraordinary feature was its apparent transparency. Different sections of the creature's body repeatedly faded from visible to partially invisible. The transparent areas appeared blurred and fluid, resembling moving water or optical distortion. After crossing the highway, the creature quickly disappeared behind the trees. The witness remained frozen for several moments before regaining her composure and completing the remaining 75-kilometer drive to Fort Nelson. Now, the creature's size, muscular build, and upright posture, and heavy covering of hair suggests a Sasquatch. Its shifting transparency, however, closely resembled descriptions of the phenomenon known as the Glimmer Man. Whether the witness encountered a cloaked Bigfoot, a translucent humanoid, or something entirely unknown remains unexplained. Now, most Sasquatch encounters involve an unexpected sighting followed by a rapid disappearance into the wilderness. Our next account is considerably darker. It describes an alleged military operation in which soldiers were repeatedly ordered to locate and kill two Bigfoot-like beings in an isolated Alaskan valley. Now, the following account was submitted by a retired serviceman identified as Mike. He said the story was relayed to him by a trusted former combat associate he called Jim. Now, both names were reportedly changed due to concerns about military secrecy. The account has never been independently verified. However, Mike insisted that he had served alongside Jim for years and completely trusted his integrity. Now, according to the story, Jim was temporarily assigned to a military unit at an undisclosed location in Alaska. Now, during one alert, Jim and the other members of his platoon boarded a truck and traveled approximately 15 to 20 minutes into a remote valley. An officer and a civilian guide led the soldiers about a mile into the wilderness. They were told that an animal had become a threat to the military compound and nearby residents. Jim assumed they were hunting a dangerous bear. The platoon spread into a skirmish line and advanced to the edge of a large meadow. Approximately 50 yards away stood what appeared to be a dark brown bear. The officer identified it as the target, as the soldiers raised their weapons and the creature stood upright. Jim immediately realized it was not a bear. He described it as approximately 6 feet tall with broad, flat shoulders, unusually long legs, extended arms, and a large humped head. The being turned and looked directly toward the soldiers. No one initially fired. Now, the creature then reached toward the ground and began running away. A second, smaller being, approximately 4 to 5 feet tall, was following it. The officer ordered the platoon to open fire. The smaller creature was struck first and collapsed. A larger being stopped running, returned to the following one, and dropped to one knee beside it despite the continuing gunfire. Jim described the sound it made as a grief-stricken cry of a mother over her dying child. The soldiers stopped firing, but the officer ordered them to continue. The larger creature refused to abandon the smaller one. It eventually collapsed after sustaining dozens of additional rounds. Now, the platoon remained in position for nearly an hour. Jim said that no one spoke or looked at each other. He felt physically sick over what had occurred. The officer and civilian guide eventually examined the bodies and confirmed the kills. The remaining soldiers were not permitted to approach them. Now, on the return trip, Jim noticed several unfamiliar military vehicles traveling toward the site, even though he believed that no other unit was operating in the area. Back at the compound, the soldiers were questioned individually and allegedly warned that discussing the operation would result in imprisonment at Fort Leavenworth. Years later, Jim finally told Mike what had happened. According to Mike, Jim remained deeply ashamed and refused to speak publicly about the incident. Mike believed the creatures were not simply animals. The larger being attempted to protect the smaller one. Its refusal to flee and its apparent expression of grief convinced him that the platoon had killed intelligent, emotionally aware beings. Whether the story describes an actual classified operation, a distorted recollection, or military folklore remains unknown. However, it does raise a disturbing question. If Sasquatch possess intelligence, family bonds, and emotions comparable to our own, should they be considered animals, unknown hominids, or something much closer to humans? Now, Alaska's unexplained creatures are not confined to its forest and mountain valleys. In the cold waters near Kodiak Island, a group of students reportedly watched an enormous spike-backed animal trailing one of the ocean's most powerful predators. In May 2014, a group of Alaska high school softball players reportedly witnessed an enormous unidentified sea creature while traveling by ferry near Kodiak Island. The primary witness was 18 years old. At approximately 11 p.m., she and several other students gathered on the outside deck. Although the sun was setting, enough light remained to see the surrounding water. The group soon noticed a pod of approximately 10 to 15 orcas swimming alongside the ferry's wake. Several calves were visible among them. The students watched the whales for nearly 30 minutes before the pod disappeared. Another 30 to 40 minutes passed. As the students prepared to return inside, one of them noticed that appeared to be another dorsal fin breaking the surface. This second fin appeared, then followed by several more. The witnesses quickly realized that these were not individual whales. The structures were arranged in two rows and were attached to a single enormous creature. The jagged fins or spikes appeared to rise 8 to 10 feet above the surface. Some seemed damaged, with sections missing from them. Beneath the spikes, the witness could barely make out a long, dark back slicing through the water. The creature surfaced approximately 20 to 30 feet from the ferry and traveled parallel to it. 9 or 10 students reportedly stood in complete silence as more of the animal continued to emerge. It remained visible for approximately 6 or 7 minutes, and based on the length of time it took to pass, the witness estimated it may have been 60 to 70 feet long, possibly larger. By then, darkness had fallen. The creature was visible mainly because of the light shining from the ferry's windows. Attempts to photograph it with their phones was unsuccessful. The most disturbing aspect of the sighting was the creature's apparent behavior. The witnesses believed it was following the orcapod they had observed earlier. Now, orcas are intelligent apex predators with few natural threats. Yet, this enormous spike-covered animal appeared to be trailing and possibly hunting a pod that included several young whales. After the creature's final section disappeared beneath the water, the students remained silent. They barely discussed the incident during the rest of the trip and initially told no one else about it. Years later, some members of the group occasionally contacted one another to confirm what they had all witnessed that they all witnessed the same thing. Whatever surfaced between the ferry appeared massive, heavily armored or spiked, and possibly capable of hunting one of the most formidable predators in the ocean. Now, from the waters near Kodiak, now we move north to the community with a name that seems almost appropriate for UFO activity. In North Pole, Alaska, one woman reported seeing an enormous silent craft near her home. Within days, the sighting was followed by a mysterious tower installation and an encounter with two men who seemed to know exactly what she had witnessed. So in March 2018, a woman returned home from work in North Pole, Alaska, and noticed that her dogs were behaving strangely. They were barking with an urgency and fear she had never heard before. The animals remained focused on something outside. Now, when the witness looked upward, she saw an enormous craft hovering near the home. It was completely silent. There was no engine noise, rotor sound, vibrations, or other indication of conventional propulsion. The craft appeared saucer-shaped and displayed 4 lights. The witness estimated that the lights were spaced approximately 40 foot apart, suggesting that the object was exceptionally large. She remembered thinking that the craft looked powerful enough to lift her entire house from the ground. It hovered silently before eventually drifting away. The witness later told her husband what she had seen. They assumed the incident was over. So approximately a week later, however, the couple noticed that a large communication tower had suddenly been erected near their home. Both worked in construction and understood the difficulty of installing such a structure during the Alaskan winter. Temperatures were reportedly near 40 degrees below zero, and the ground was frozen solid with permafrost. The speed and timing of the installation immediately caught their attention. Later, while visiting a local bar called the Screaming Weasel, the witness noticed 2 men dressed in black suits. They approached her and began asking pointed questions about the UFO. And according to the witness, the men told her that they knew she had seen something. She refused to provide details because she felt they already possessed information about the encounter and merely wanted to confirm it. The two men eventually left the bar. She never saw them again. The silent craft, the sudden tower installation, and the appearance of two black suited strangers left the witness wondering whether the UFO had been monitored, tracked, or expected. Now, the North Pole encounter suggests that someone may have been watching the skies over Alaska. Our final case takes us deep into the Alaska range, where alleged government remote viewing sessions, eyewitness reports, and UFO lore converge around a single mountain. Its name is Mount Hayes. Now, deep within Alaska's isolated wilderness stands Mount Hayes, a towering peak associated with UFO sightings, government remote viewing, unexplained disappearances, and claims of underground non-human installation. Located in the eastern Alaska range, Mount Hayes rises above an immense region of glaciers, mountains, and largely uninhabited territory. Its isolation has made direct investigations extremely difficult. The mountain is also frequently associated with a so-called Alaska Triangle, a broad region known for aircraft incidents, missing persons, unusual lights, and other unexplained activity. Now, much of the Mount Hayes legend originated with remote viewing sessions reportedly connected to the United States government's psychic intelligence research. During one of these sessions, the remote viewer allegedly perceived an extensive facility hidden inside the mountain. The installation was described as containing large interior chambers, advanced machinery, spacecraft, and non-human occupants. The facility supposedly existed deep beneath the surface and was inaccessible through ordinary means. Other remote viewing sessions reportedly identified similar hidden facilities elsewhere in the world, leading some researchers to suggest that Mount Hayes could be part of a larger underground network. Now, these claims remain unverified. Remote viewing is subjective, and the existence of government research into psychic intelligence does not prove that every perception obtained during those programs was accurate. However, Mount Hayes mystery extends beyond remote viewing. Witnesses in the surrounding region have reported glowing spheres, unusual aerial lights, and objects exhibiting speed and maneuverability inconsistent with those of conventional aircraft. A former security officer named Jared Augustine reportedly observed a glowing orb near Mount Hayes that divided into three separate objects. The lights then moved away in different directions. Other accounts describe luminous objects hovering over the mountain before accelerating or disappearing. Some witnesses have claimed to see the lights entering the terrain itself. These reports have fueled speculation that an entrance or concealed installation may exist somewhere within the mountain. Now, Mount Hayes has always been connected to unexplained disappearances. Alaska's wilderness is exceptionally dangerous. Exposure, falls, wildlife, river crossings, navigational errors, and sudden weather changes account for many missing person incidents. Still, some investigators question whether every disappearance in the region can be explained by natural conditions. Television programs and UFO investigators have examined the mountain through aerial searches, remote viewing research, eyewitness interviews, and reviews of alleged government documentation. No physical proof of an extraterrestrial installation has ever been publicly produced. Now, the existing material consists mainly of remote viewing testimony, witness reports, disputed documents, and interpretations that have become increasingly difficult to separate from legend. There are also conventional possibilities. Atmospheric effects, military aircraft, satellites, meteors, and distant aviation activity may account for some reported lights. Snow, ice, cloud cover, and shifting weather can create powerful visual distortions around isolated mountain peaks. Nevertheless, Mount Hayes remains significant because several separate mysteries appear to converge here: UFO sightings, government associated remote viewing, alleged underground structures, disappearances, and continued reports of non human activity. Is Mount Hayes concealing an extraterrestrial facility, a classified military installation, an unknown natural phenomena, or something more than a legend created by isolation and speculation? For now, the mountain keeps its secret buried beneath rock ice in one of the most remote wilderness regions on Earth. Now, the reports presented tonight cover an extraordinary range of unexplained phenomena. In Fairbanks, teenagers watched an elongated humanoid glide across the neighborhood street. Near Homer, small crawler like entities allegedly moved through the trees that later became blackened and dead. In Tunanak, a winged figure with red eyes appeared repeatedly over several years and was believed by some villagers to precede tragedy. Along the Alaska Highway, a massive hair covered humanoid shifted between visibility and transparency. At an undisclosed military location, soldiers were allegedly ordered to kill two intelligent Bigfoot like beings. Near Kodiak Island, students watched a huge spike back creature apparently following a pod of orcas. In North Pole, a silent saucer was followed by an unusual tower installation and the appearance of two mysterious men. And beneath Mount Hayes, remote viewers claimed to perceive something hidden deep inside the mountain. Now, none of these accounts provides definitive proof. Some may have conventional explanations. Others may have been distorted by fear, distance, darkness, memory, or extreme environment. But when reports involving similar entities, unusual lights, telepathic impressions, government secrecy, and unknown creatures continue to emerge from the same vast region, they cannot be dismissed without examination. Alaska remains one of the least populated and most difficult places in North America to investigate. Its wilderness offers countless places for something unknown to hide. The question is not simply what may exist in Alaska. The deeper question is how much could be there without us ever knowing. This is Unexplained Alaska. Now, please subscribe to Fams of Monsters Radio, activate notifications, and share this presentation with others interested in the unexplained. If you have experienced something unexplained in Alaska or elsewhere, I encourage you to document every detail you remember. Even details that initially seem insignificant may become important when compared to other reports. You can submit your account to Phantoms of Monsters. Witness confidentiality and anonymity will be respected when requested. If you send a chat donation this evening, and your consideration is much appreciated. Your support helps us continue documenting witness testimony, investigating unusual incidents, and preserving these accounts for future research. So let's go ahead and start the Q&A, and please type your questions in all caps. I will say tonight at 1 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, I'm going to be appearing on Coast to Coast. Richard Surrett is going to be interviewing me. I'm the only guest tonight, and then there will be an open lines afterwards. But we will be talking about a few recent investigations, including Chicago and also the Glimmerman phenomena. So if you have a chance, please go onto one of your local AM stations who have a website, and you can listen to it live. Okay, let's see. Lullaby, do you think some shadow beings are actually biological entities that only appear paranormal because of how they interact with light? I guess it's possible. You know, the whole shadow person phenomena, it's just an enigma, really. I mean, we really don't know what these things are. I believe they're either an ultra-terrestrial or extraterrestrial-like being that just seems to come into a specific area for whatever reason, unknown, and uses energy generated by humans uh, to feed upon, to remain active, to remain strong. It seems like they just say they're walking down a neighborhood on the middle of the street and going past homes, and the right energy just seems to emit from one home where there's possibly dysfunction, death, illness, and they decide to go to that location and stay there until they can no longer use it to manipulate their energy. That's the only explanation I have at this point. Now, I know there are a lot of other explanations. I um I don't know. I wish I did know. I have people ask me to talk about the shadow people more than I do, but quite honestly, I just don't know what they are. And if I had more information or had more information, I would definitely go through it and talk about it as much more. But it's not an investigation that's easy to do. It's not an investigation you can usually get results by working with a team or working with the victims. It usually requires the victims to change their ways, to change their life, to lessen the dysfunction, to lessen the bad or negative energy, and that takes time. And they usually do last a long time. Timothy Man SR. What time does Coast to Coast start? 1 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. Walla Bright, is there an Alaskan location that you consider the equivalent of Skinwalker Ranch in terms of repeated high strangeness? Well, it's a large area. It's the Alaskan Triangle. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on there. A lot of large bird sightings. A lot of planes go missing in the area for whatever reasons. Some people believe it's something to do with the magnetism and the distortion, and especially not unable to navigate by sight. And there's just a lot. I've heard of huge flying creatures, some as big as Cessnas, if not larger. Um, Land animals, something other than Bigfoot many times, something that seems very huge and unknown. Uh, there have been more pale crawler sightings over the years in the location itself. I have no idea how big it is. I know it's a huge area though. So some famous people have died in that location. So yeah, it's quite a interesting place, but enigma is the best word to use for it at this present time. Jerry the Robot, have you posted a schedule for the state episodes? No, I don't have a schedule. I kind of put it up when whatever I got and what I feel I can, if I can find decent accounts and decent reports for that particular state. I usually just go by suggestion, people who ask me to do certain states and give me reasons why, and I'll consider it. Kim Ranum, when is the next subscriber show? It should be soon. I'm going to probably schedule for early August, mid August sometime. Yeah, I will. I mean, I've just had so much going on. I just haven't really done it. Just like the newsletters, I haven't even had a chance to put a newsletter up in 3 months. I'm just extremely busy at this point. Paranormalism Net. When are you going to bring Rissa back on the show? Well, when she has something to talk about. I mean, she's always got an open, she's got an open invitation. If she ever wants to talk about anything she's working on, she's always welcome to come on, and she knows that. She's on the team, so And her and I do presentations together. So yeah, she knows. Jose Sanchez, Lon, have you noticed that recent sightings of pale cars are usually in groups as before they were found by themselves? At least that's what I've observed. Wonder why that might be. I don't know. I um I have noticed a slight difference in the amount of sightings there are, and as well as possibly pairs. It's still unusual though. They're usually just singletary sightings, but yeah, it's still it's still an unknown element there. I wish I did have more information on them. Chef Jans, are there things that are unique to Alaska not found elsewhere? Big predators, I guess, is the biggest thing the most important thing you can say. The bear activity, oh my god! I mean, especially the Kodiaks and the size of those things, and uh, some of the Bigfoot activity is kind of over the top too, compared to what is down in the lower 48. Um, just a lot of just a lot of area, a lot of wilderness. It's just so much there. Um, and anything new that would pop up would not surprise me whatsoever. Allie staring. Line, could you interview Seth Breedlove? Well, if Seth wants to come on, he can ask me. He can contact me. I know he's pretty busy creating his own videos and such now, but if he ever wants to come on, he can contact me. I mean, look, I don't do as many, if any, interviews now, but I don't go seeking them either. And people want to come on, and I feel that their information is interesting, then I'll bring them on. But at the present time, I think what I'm doing with the states and other things that I'm going to continue getting into, as well as other projects that are coming forward, I will I will be presenting them. So until I get someone to ask me, I'll do it then. But I'm not seeking people at the present. Lala, what exactly is a pale crawler, and where do you think they come from? I have no idea where they come from. They're described as human-like beings that are approximately 5 to 6 foot tall, maybe bigger, very gangly looking, whitish skin. But I have heard of them in different colors. Actually, hairless, um, strange gaits. The way they walk. Many times they crawl. Many times they do walk on two legs. They usually pop up in areas where you wouldn't even expect anything like that. Uh, the encounters are pretty dramatic, though they're not known to attack people. So I don't know what their purpose is, where they come from. They just seem to manifest, it's anywhere they can manifest that. I mean, we just don't have a whole lot of information about them. We will track them. We continue to report what we get about them, but until we start coming up with more information, it's all speculation at this point. Can Squatch, have you heard of any DARPA facilities located in Alaska? Well, other than some of the telescope and antenna arrays that have been known to frequent the area occasionally, and they don't stay up long sometimes. Many of them are moved. If it's DARPA, it's very likely not known. I don't know any particularly right now, or have read any reports about DARPA using projects and building things up there in Alaska. Uh, but of course, there have been in the past. And I don't even know if DARPA was even involved with some of those projects, but that's what they're known for. Something unusual, something they're using for some type of experimentation or to track other countries or track other locations as well. So, but no, I don't know of anything at this point. Michelle, do you think the men in black were there all along, or do you think the UFOs showed up on radar somewhere and that triggered them to be there? My whole my whole thought about the men in black is that they usually follow up where craft or beings are seen and shouldn't have been seen. And they usually go to the location very quickly and confront those people that they believe or know who had the encounter and try to talk them in out of even reporting it. They're not successful many times. Many people get a little shook up and go and report anyway. But I don't think they're human. I think they're possibly extraterrestrial. I call them the extraterrestrial or alien cleanup team. I mean, they seem to follow behind everything and try to dissuade people from reporting certain phenomena they've experienced. I mean, at this point, that seems to be what they do. But we don't know much more about them. Michelle, in your opinion, do you think that Sasquatch possesses the same emotional intelligence as we do, or maybe in some ways a higher emotional capacity than us? Oh, absolutely. I think they're very intelligent beings. I think they know much more than what we think they do. Um, you know, I don't know what to say about Sasquatch at this point right now. I had my encounter in 1981. I have continuously thought about it, why it occurred, why other things have kind of mixed in with it as I've investigated the phenomena over the years. Um, I personally believe they're ultra-terrestrial beings for the most part, though I do believe there are indigenous beings. Um, they're just something else that's within the fabric of life and not necessarily something associated with that what lives on this earth all the time. Though I do believe there are some groups that are here all the time. So, take that for what it's worth. But that's about the only thing I can say about Bigfoot. And of course, every a lot of people have their own opinions. Many believe that it's flesh and blood. It's here all the time. It's got an ability to hide. It's got an ability to stay silent and keep out of view of humans and others things that may pose a threat to them. But at this point right now, all we can do is continue to take the information, form theories, and until we can prove it, we're left with what we've got. Michelle, do you think the large, transparent humanoid creature was a Bigfoot that was going back and forth between the veil, but too young or inexperienced to stay solidly in this vibration? That seems like a logical explanation. There are people who swear that they do cloak themselves. There's a lot of people who believes that the Glimmer Man theory or the Glimmer Man phenomena is actually a cryptid or possibly Bigfoot using some type of supernatural abilities to cloak themselves. If that's what you think, that's fine. I mean, but I don't know at this point if that's true or not. I did have a photograph sent to me that I know wasn't CGI or AI that showed a partial Bigfoot and and parts of it literally looking like glass scene or like what the Glimmer Man shows when it's cloaked. So there may be something there, but who knows? Lala, why do so many people connect CERN to the Mandela effect, time anomalies, and high strangeness? Is there any investigative value to those claims, or are they purely internet folklore? Well, it's all speculation. We really don't know what will be the result of CERN. it was a concern during our investigation of Chicago with the Mothman because Fermilabs has a particle accelerator outside the city. It's the oldest particle accelerator on Earth. It had an accident around the time these things started being seen. Can CERN, or actually what it intends to do, does it create a rift within time space? I don't know. We used that theory possibly to explain what these beings are, but at this point, I just don't really see anything that associates with it. Again, I'm not going to blow smoke up your butts, but that's the best I can tell you. And there you go. Lala, where can you buy your books? Asking for a friend. Thank you. All my books are on Amazon. The ones that are in print, there's 5 of them in print now, so you can get it on Amazon. You can click on my website on the blog post, and I've got links to the books themselves. It's also actually Barnes and Noble carries it some places. Walmart carries it. There are a few other bookstores that do have my books as well. Anything else, folks? Okay. Well, look, tonight, again, if you have the opportunity, I will be on Coast to Coast at 1:00 a.m. Eastern time. And if you want to listen, I appreciate it. So I want to again thank everyone for joining me this evening. I'm grateful for your continued interest and support of this channel. So until next time, please remain observant, trust your instincts, and remember that the world around us may be far stranger than what we've been led to believe. So have a nice evening. Have a great weekend. See you next Friday. Good night.